Aloha.
Aloha.
There we go. Aloha, everyone. Welcome to our panel presentation. As Joe mentioned, I'm Dr. Mike Menchaca. I'm the chair of the Department of Learning, Design, and Technology. And actually, we have our entire department on the panel today. One is going to be coming in virtually, but he'll be here as well. And each of us are going to just give a little bit tidbits about what we're doing and what's going on in our department. I just want to note that all of these slides are available for everyone. There's a URL there, the go.hawaii.edu/N4S. So you can just jot that down, and that's the shortened URL to these slides, and you can have access to them at any time should you so desire. But let me just quickly go over the agenda. I'm going to give some very quick introductions just so that we can make sure that we dedicate most of our time to discussion, collaboration, and what my colleagues have to say. I'm going to talk a little bit about our department, and then we're going to go over many of the current projects that we're on, and we're going to try to make them as relevant as we possibly can to what things you might be interested in the Pacific region, the Southeast Asia region as well. And then we're going to try to make some connections with some discussion and questions at the end. So let me go ahead. Here's our entire department there. Happy faces all, as I've already been introduced. So there's me. And like I said, you can have access to the slides later. So if you want to read the extended introductions, they're all there. So to my left there is Dr. Eichelberger. She's a faculty specialist in our department, so she has kind of an interesting role as she both teaches some of our courses, but also she does a lot with the design of technology and distance programs in our entire College of Education, of which we're a member of. She deals a lot with professional development with our colleagues in the College of Education, and in fact, throughout the University of Hawai'i at Mānoa, and she's an instructional design specialist. We're going to talk about what that means to our department and talk a little bit about the importance of frameworks and a design thinking approach in our department in particular as well. To her left is Dr. Dan Hoffman. He's associate professor in learning design and technology, and he specializes in computer science education. He is in a grant now that specializes in not just computer science education, but making it culturally relevant. That's something that's really important in our department and that we know is important to you as well. He's from the New York City Teaching Fellows program at Columbia University, and we're happy to have him. And he also does a lot with gaming, gamification, educational software, and the like there as well, and also is an instructional technologist. To his left is his wife, Dr. Singo Peck. So yes, we do have a married couple in the department. Very lucky to have. She's a professor of learning design and technology, also instructional technology and media at Teachers College at Columbia University. And her research focuses on interactive media, cognitive sciences, cognitive development, learning, and she's particularly interested in digital environments, complex environments in contemporary situations, especially with cognition and behavior as well. So we'll look at her. To her left is Dr. Peter Leong. He's a professor in the department. He has had multiple roles in our department, both as an instructional faculty for many years, and now he's kind of taken over and changed roles. He is the director of the technology and distance programs, of which Ari is also a member, and that's specializing in the integration of technology and distance delivery systems in our College of Education, and really looking at complex approaches. He's very into virtual reality and augmented reality, culturally relevant computing. He's also involved in that, and he's a Regent Medal for Teaching Excellence in our college, as was Dr. Peck as well. And then to his left is one of our two newest faculty members, and that's Dr. Shamila Janakiraman. And she specializes in instructional design, and she's teaching in both our master's and our doctoral program, interested in augmented reality, virtual reality, game-based learning, and attitude change towards the use of technology in particular. We're very happy to have her. And then finally, who you'll meet later online. We didn't want to switch out the slides, so he will be. You'll see him live. He's online now. That's Dr. Chih-Pu, another of our new faculty members, assistant professor, and he's doing a lot with artificial intelligence in education. Obviously, that's something that came up earlier in the program, a very important area of concern. He's designed a new course that we'll be teaching in a couple of semesters. And then he is interested in mixed methods, quantitative, qualitative methods as well. So we're happy to have him. So that's all of our faculty members here today. Yes. Happy to have them all. I just want to briefly give a little background and information about not only our department, but our location. How many of you have actually been to the island or the state of Hawaii, one of the islands? So a couple. So the chain of Hawaiian islands is actually officially the most remote location on the planet from any other mainland continent, right? So there's other areas that maybe you might consider remote areas, but in terms of distance from any particular mainland area, it's about 2,500 to 2,600 miles just to the nearest location. So we're quite remote area. And so as for that, we're very unique in terms of how the view of the world is, and our place in the Pacific kind of being in the middle of the Pacific and not necessarily, always United States or always Southeast Asia or other Pacific regions. And it's quite unique. And I think one of the things that you should, if there's one takeaway about Hawaii, is that it's a very unusual state compared to some of the other states of the Union. So as far as the native Hawaiians in the state of Hawaii, we occupy that state illegally, right? So as a colonial entity, the United States illegally overthrew the Hawaiian kingdom, the monarch at that time. And that's not contested, right? That's something that if you learn Hawaiian history, it's an interesting juxtaposition of viewpoints about being a member of the United States, yet at the same time feeling that you're more of a country in a colonial setting. So there's a lot of intricacies involved. And the reason why I bring that up as so important is it's important to understand the milieu, the culture in which you're operating, especially as you're delivering education and becoming sensitive to that, right? So this technology-dominated Western view of how we portray the importance of technology is not something that lends itself well to education within this system. And some of my colleagues are going to talk about, how we can be more culturally relevant and understand how to do that in these situations. There we are, Mānoa's in the chain of islands, in the island of Oahu, in the city of Honolulu, which is the largest city in the state of Hawaii, and a little over 1.5 million or so. So a big city, but not a giant city as well. And then just in terms of the University of Hawaii, it's 10 campuses across 4 islands. Manoa, our university is the flagship research, so it's the Research One entity in the state of Hawaii. So it's kind of interesting because it's the one Research One institution in the entire state. And we have just under 20,000 students at our flagship. And in our department, actually our department has been one of the oldest departments in the University of Hawaii. We've been around, I think, 55, 56 years, something like that. And we've had several name changes. So instructional technology in the old days of film strips and CDs and laser discs. And, so we've gone through, and then we're educational technology. And now we're learning design and technology, and the name design will be important in a moment. And one of our strengths is pioneering contemporary flexible learning environments. So utilization of media, utilization of online learning, virtual spaces, artificial intelligence. Some of those things are the really important things of our department. And then in our programs, we have a continuum. So from very, very practitioner-based to very, very theoretical. So we have several different programs. They're all at the graduate level. We don't have an undergraduate program, but we teach some of the undergraduate courses that are required in our university. So we have certificates of online learning and teaching, very applied, real world. How do we build complex learning spaces in contemporary settings? Master's level, that's a combination of theory and practice as well. That relies a lot on instructional design, and the doctorate, which is very, very at the theoretical level. But regardless of which program, we're very responsible to regional and local issues, but also our place globally and internationally is very important. But most importantly, we value what we call in Hawaii ohana. So some of you may have seen the movie Lilo and Stitch, and ohana is family. It's family, but it's a lot more. Ohana has a very special meaning in Hawaii, and it's just that sense of togetherness, that sense of support, that sense of understanding that families can be complex, that you can have disagreements, that they can be very virulent disagreements, but in the end, you talk about those things, you understand those things, and you think about how you can leverage your collaboration to make something stronger than just any particular individual can do. And that's something very important in the state of Hawaii, and particularly in our department as well. So we definitely put people before technology, and that's something that's really critical in our department. And lastly, I just want to say, and you'll hear this throughout with my colleagues as well, what's really important about how our department views the world is that it's not just important that it's technology for technology's sake. You hear that a lot, like, oh, well, technology is important. Technology skills are important. Yes, technology skills are important, but why are they important? What problems are they solving? What are they doing to address cultural issues, intercultural issues, interdisciplinary issues, all of those things in the real world. So we think of things from a design thinking perspective. And that is, we like to think about what it is that we're tackling with and think about a more formalized approach of understanding what those different problems are, starting with empathy, right? How do we understand what the issue is? How do we empathize with those stakeholders that are involved with that particular issue or problem that we're addressing? And then we go there to defining, okay, now let's really define what our problem is. Let's ideate what possible solutions there might be to that problem. And then let's build prototypes. Let's build artifacts in the real world that solve these issues, test them, get data about them, understand them, learn from that data, and then go all the way back to the beginning, kind of in a circular pattern. So really that idea of tackling problems from the perspective of design thinking, I think from our panel might be hopefully one thing that you have from a takeaway. Like, how can I start thinking about things from a bigger perspective outside of the little silo that I'm used to, understanding that there's bigger problems. I think this relates to what the peace and conflict group was talking about with polarization, right? So how do we address that issue of polarization from a standpoint of empathy when we might be on one of those extremes or in the middle and struggling with the fact that there's different ideologies out there, right? So how do we think about that from a design perspective to think about what the problem might be and solve that problem? Did I miss anything?
No.
Okay. And now I will turn it over to my colleague, Dr. Eichelberger.
Thanks, Mike. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for being here. We appreciate you being here after lunch. I know that can be difficult. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our departmental meetings and retreats, which sounds really boring. But why I want to talk about that is actually I kind of realized that I really want to commend this morning's panelists about the issues and really important work that they were talking about. And they're coming at things from such a global perspective. And we were talking about, okay, let me get the 3 I's here right: intercultural, international, and interdisciplinary. And when I was thinking about what I was going to talk about today, I think we might add another I, and that's interpersonal. So because this is where a lot of our interpersonal interactions happens for us as a department, I think it is relevant and could be something that you take away today. We all have to interact with other humans, right? We all work with other people. And so perhaps some of the things that we've done might be relevant for you in your own interpersonal dealings. So in the LTEC department, as I'm sure all of you do, we serve many stakeholders. But one of our stakeholders, and I think oftentimes one of the stakeholders that we often forget about or maybe don't spend enough time thinking about, is your internal stakeholders. So in our case, our own faculty group, this group that's up here at this panel and Chih-Pu online, and how we interact together. So we really value the relationships among this group and think a lot about how we interact with each other. We care really deeply about the health of those interactions and relationships among us, but we realize that like any relationship, relationships take work. And so sometimes we need to reevaluate how we interact with each other and not necessarily just go along with the status quo of how we do things. So one of the most common ways that we interact with each other is through our departmental meetings and our retreats. So we meet every month for a few hours as a whole group, and once a semester, sometimes once a year for a full day for a departmental retreat. And this is where we have a lot of social interaction, but we also do a lot of decision making. And those decisions can really impact us individually as well as our entire group. This was a little bit before COVID that we kind of realized, we've been doing things the same way for many years, and we could probably do this a lot better. So we decided that we really wanted to try to improve the way that we communicated and made our decisions as a group. We wanted to be more inclusive and transparent. So a colleague of ours, who's actually no longer with us, Dr. Grace Lynn, and I were really interested in design thinking. And what she and I did was we actually took one of our retreats, so this is an all-day event with the entire group, and literally applied design thinking techniques to that day to address the issue of how we communicate and make decisions. And just as a side note, we are learning design and technology. We're a technology department. For this day, no one was allowed to bring their laptops or use their phones this was a completely technology-free event. So just side note. So I'm going to just tell you super briefly about some of the techniques that we used as we moved through some of the design thinking phases. We've grouped them according to, design thinking, it looks like a straight line, but as any of you know who engage in design thinking, it's really a cyclical, kind of convoluted process, right? It's not necessarily 1, 2, 3. So starting with empathy and trying to understand ourselves better, we gathered quite a bit of information prior to this retreat so we could reflect that back to the group, how people were feeling. We used different size groupings within the retreat, and we did a lot of individual idea creation and theming up of. I'm going to show you some pictures of what this day kind of looked like. This is us working individually, coming up with ideas that we then posted on boards and themed up. We used these image cards. They're called O cards that have watercolor paintings on them that are a little ambiguous and can be interpreted in many ways. They're used in psychology. And we asked our members to talk about themselves in relation to a card that they had randomly drawn to make personal connections and talk about themselves. We had folks reflecting throughout the day about what was happening, how they were feeling, what we were doing. Then in talking about defining what our actual problem was or what we wanted to specifically address, we used how might we statements. Again, we used different size groups. We used sticker voting, and we used grouping strips. And I'll, again, show you some photos of what those look like. We had a lot of data that we had collected from various stakeholders, and we printed that out and stripped it up. This is a small group prioritizing and theming some of that data to have a discussion. Another small group discussion. This is us as a large group talking about individual ideas and prioritizing those. This is a how might we statement that actually you can see the stickers on. So we were voting, which one do you like? And you could vote, you'd put your sticky on it to say, so this was the one that got the most upvotes. How might we implement new/other decision-making processes that value everyone's input? For ideation, we had a random object association. We had a workshop. Again, we were using sticker voting. We had individual and group discussions. These are some of our random objects. We were trying to, through these techniques, come up with as many ideas as possible, not the perfect idea, right? It was about quantity, not quality. We wanted many, many, many ideas. This was a worksheet we were using where we asked folks to come up with what we were calling practical deer and wild ideas to, again, try to inspire or be creative about your ideas. I'll just point out a couple of the wild ideas over here. One was no more meetings at all. One was anoint a dictator. So, I mean, it was really, again, about the quantity of ideas. This is a picture of us looking at our themed up strips. And then we prototyped a new way of doing our meetings. So here on this sheet, it says share information prior to meetings, focus on decision-making, allow for anonymous commenting and voting. And while we had one of the small groups pilot this in our next meeting, and actually it's been how we've been running our meetings since. It was pretty successful. It's not so important what we did with our meetings so much as the process, right? And so the few things that we thought would be perhaps interesting or relevant for you was just this idea of not taking for granted how you do things in your interpersonal relations with the people that you're most close to. I think that it's a little bit like thinking about yourself perhaps as a parent, that sometimes you need to take care of yourself before you can take care of a child or someone else when you're a caregiver. We have lots of stakeholders, our students, community members. Sometimes we need to take care of ourselves before we can really serve those entities. And I'm sure all of you have entities that you serve as well. And then lastly, thinking about the internal stakeholders and prioritizing the people and the relationships between those people. Okay, if you're interested, my colleague Grace Lynn and I actually published 4 articles about the specifics of how we redid some of our meetings and retreats. We had multiple dates. So these are links to those if you want to find out more about those specific techniques and how we use them. Dan?
And before Dan goes, I just want to say for the record that all of the pictures of me before I became chair didn't have any gray hair.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Ari. So in this next part of the talk, Dr. Peck and I are going to talk a little bit and share how we've used the design thinking process to form a researcher-practitioner partnership in the area of computer science education. So what you see here is a intercultural, interdisciplinary group consisting of faculty and students from the University of Hawaii and practitioners from the Department of Education in Hawaii. And collectively, we have diverse expertise in the area of curriculum studies, evaluation, instructional design, computer science education, so on and so forth. And collectively, we're known as the Advancing Culturally Relevant Computing Project. And this particular project came to be when we were awarded a National Science Foundation grant in 2021. And the purpose of this grant was twofold. First, to partner with the Hawaii Department of Education to understand the role of culturally relevant computing in CS education. And secondly, to provide elementary educators the resources and preparation needed to integrate CS education into their teaching. Now, I want to focus in this talk on the second bullet point there, providing elementary educators with the resources and preparation. Now, you might be wondering, well, why elementary educators? Well, as part of the design thinking process, when we partnered with our practitioners in the Department of Education, it became very clear that it was actually the elementary schools where the greatest need for support in the area of integrating computer science education was needed. And if you quickly look at this chart, you can see that only 20% of the 168 elementary schools were actually offering computer science learning opportunities when we kicked off this project. And that was considerably different than the middle school, high school, and combo level. So we decided to focus at the elementary level. And just like many states in the United States and perhaps some of your countries around the world, Hawaii is aiming to provide computer science opportunities to all students in all of the public schools. However, there's a challenge in that the Department of Education suffers from a shortage of qualified CS teachers. And we know from the research that when you ask a teacher to teach computer science and they don't have a background in that area, they face all kinds of challenges. Pedagogical, they have minimal formal training, and they have little exposure to the field, and there's a lack of community. So knowing that, we came up with a proposed solution, which was to offer professional development in culturally relevant computing. Now, I'm going to assume everyone here knows about professional development, but let's focus on the second half of that proposed solution, culturally relevant computing. And to understand that, we need to think about culturally relevant pedagogy. Culturally relevant pedagogy is an approach to teaching that uses students' cultural knowledge and their backgrounds to affirm their cultural identity while also assisting them in developing critical perspectives that challenge inequities in their schools and other institutions. And as you can see from this Venn diagram, there's three primary outcomes for culturally relevant pedagogy. In the top circle, you see student learning and achievement, which we're all familiar with, but you might be less familiar with the bottom two circles, which is cultural competence and critical consciousness. And so the idea behind culturally relevant computing is to empower students to learn about computer science concepts and practices in a way that helps them learn and achieve, but also simultaneously help them develop their cultural competence and their critical consciousness. Now, in order for us to pursue this with in-service teachers working in elementary schools, we knew we needed to draw on a number of existing frameworks, such as the Computer Science Teachers Association CS framework that lists 5 core concepts. So we merged that particular framework with a framework that is particular to the Department of Education. And this framework is known as HA, or breadth. And this is a framework to develop the skills and behaviors and dispositions that are reminiscent of Hawaii's unique context that Mike spoke about a little bit earlier. And you can see there's 6 valued outcomes here, such as a sense of belonging, responsibility, excellence, aloha, total well-being, and a sense of place or a sense of Hawaii. Now, we realized in order to bring these frameworks together, we actually had to develop some examples of what culturally relevant computing might look like in the classroom. And I'll just quickly show you an example. So in one of our modules, we introduce students to the value of aloha, love, compassion, hello, goodbye, as well as the value of malama, which means to take care and protect yourself and the people around you. And what we did is we created these little scenarios where we created fictional characters such as Kala'i, who you see here, and we give these somewhat nuanced and complex scenarios to students to have them think about whether or not Kala'i is showing aloha in malama and what he might do different in this scenario to protect himself, to protect his family, and show aloha to his community. Now, I'm going to just skip forward and talk a little bit about what we're learning, and then I'll pass it on. So some of the things that we're learning, and I'm happy to talk more about this, is we're really learning that leveraging culturally relevant computing might be a way to prepare educators who have little prior knowledge and formal training to integrate CS into their practice. And I'd like to answer any questions that you might have about that. But for right now, I'm going to pass it on to my colleague, Dr. Peter. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. And we're concerned about the timing here, that's why. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and talk a little bit about how we approach program design delivery, specifically from the perspective of design thinking. We like to think of our department as a little mini IAFOR because we are really interdisciplinary. All our backgrounds are really interdisciplinary. We are intercultural. I'm originally from Malaysia, Singapore, and Singo is from Korea, Shamila from India, and Chih-Pu from Taiwan. And we also like to think of us as being really international, right? So let's look at the design thinking as an approach where you've user-centered approach and for problem solving. In Hawaii, we are challenged by a geographically dispersed population. We have population on 6 major islands. And needless to say, we have a lot of need from neighbor island students for education, and travel cost is high. And so hence there's this inequity and limited opportunities to educational programs on the neighbor islands. And we have had since 2006 delivered our programs either through hybrid or online learning, right? And it provides flexible, asynchronous, and synchronous delivery after work hours for students who are mostly working adults. And that truly meets the needs of our community, as is demonstrated by this particular cohort that we just recently conducted some interviews with alumni. We really value collaborative work in our program, right? So collaboration is a cornerstone in our program. Students are cohorted, which means they take courses together, the core courses together from the time they were admitted to the program. We value peer reviews that students do for each other. And courses require, each one of our courses, both our core and our elective courses require collaborative group projects here. An example here is how we build community through our new student orientations. I'm speaking specifically, this is during the COVID. We used to have a on-campus and online cohort, but because of COVID, we went fully online. And so we were concerned. One of the cornerstones of community building is a 3-day face-to-face orientation that we used to conduct prior to going online. So during the COVID, we had to move everything to fully online. And so we really work hard to really create a community through online synchronous collaboration as well as on asynchronous. One of the strategies things we really work is while we are all geographically dispersed and online, we made sure that everyone had similar objects. So we send orientation package with our hat and some snacks that we could all, and at times they're appropriate, we will make sure everyone partake of the food and put on the hat so that we know we have this feeling of togetherness even though we're online. An example of the agenda that we have, oh, that's Dr. Mike with his LTEC hat. We are very, very open with our students. We make sure that students get to know us personally. So this is an example of what we call a true and lies activity. We would have each one of us giving 2 true statements and 1 lie and ask students to guess who it is. Bio breaks. Now this is important because culturally in Hawaii, everything like in Asia, it's surrounded our campuses around food. So we have bio breaks, Greek food. We will make sure students actually had lunch together online synchronously while we were doing the orientation. And the other thing, we also make sure we leverage 3D technologies to make sure that we can also reach out to students on all the neighbor islands. One of the things we're very proud of is since 2011, we've had our virtual graduations in the 3D virtual world of Second Life, right? So we totally simulate the entire commencement ceremony online in the 3D environment. The avatars have their gowns, and they got the diplomas, they have everything commencement address online as well. How do I work this video here, Nick?
A new dimension in learning. Good evening, I'm Stephanie Leong.
And I'm Keahi Tucker. Their education is real, their master's degrees bona fide, but at graduation, reality gets a little fuzzy. Tonight, 22 Oahu students met up inside Diamond Head Crater for a commencement speech truly out of this world. Ben Gutierrez is here to explain in our top story, Ben.
Well, Keahi, it is a first for the University of Hawai'i as the College of Education held a graduation ceremony online in a world that included a Diamond Head amphitheater. No need for caps and gowns, just a laptop and internet access. These students received their master's degrees in educational technology in a small classroom, or actually in the virtual online world of Second Life.
About maybe 2 or 3 of the online students will come and join the actual commencement ceremony. So we thought it'd be a good idea for us to have a virtual graduate ceremony in Second Life.
22 graduates attended the virtual ceremony. They got to hear a commencement speech delivered by the Dean of the College of Education, who was in another small classroom.
Don't be afraid to risk, for that's how you learn.
And delivered by the Dean's Second Life avatar.
The road less traveled is sometimes fraught with barricades, but it is on that road where your character is tested and your growth realized. So take a leap and go for it. Part of the issue for us in education, though, is to adapt to the changing students, the changing learners, because they're growing up with technology and are more comfortable with technology than faculty are at times.
Not only was the graduation ceremony virtual, so is the after-graduation party. Bummer. There were 3 students who actually were on campus for the graduation.
I thought it was great. My family was able to come and attend the Second Life graduation. There's 10 kids in my family, and they range from Georgia all the way to Texas to California.
Using technology as a stage, I think, for graduation makes a lot of sense.
One graduate says there was some advanced preparation.
We did a dress rehearsal and a run through with this, and it seemed to work just fine. So
You had a rehearsal?
yeah, last week.
But graduation is now over, and it's time to celebrate.
And we'll go to the party where you should be. There you go. And now you have to socialize. I'll leave you there.
While it is a first for UH, another college actually held the first ever virtual graduation a year ago. The students who took part today have their master's degrees, but if they want, they can still take part in graduation in real life next weekend, and no flying. Ben Gutierrez, Hawaii News Now.
Very nice. Thank you, Ben. By the way, the university.
All right, I'm just gonna move on to that. So we also do like virtual parties because during the pandemic we couldn't have like real social. That was a official ceremony. I'm just flip through. You can see some of the photos of our virtual party. One last thing before I pass on to Shamila is that one way of meeting the needs of the community where they are is an example we have instituted quite a number of years ago with the technology justice program. It's a one-on-one faculty mentoring, right? So in this case, we have a lot of faculty who are PhDs in their area, but they don't know and they need a lot of help with technical skill support. Then on the other hand, we have our graduate students who need kind of hands-on experience, right? And so what we did was we paired up the faculty with the graduate students so that they could help each other, want to learn and want to practice their online technology and technology integration support skills. Thank you very much. I'm going to hand on to Shamila.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Peter. Okay, so now you heard about the wonderful things that LTEC faculty have done. I'm a new faculty in the LTEC department. I joined last August, August 2023. And yeah, so first to show you this photo. So can you guess when this photo could have been taken? So you would think it's a recent party or some picnic that we went to. No, it was a day when I went for the interview. That was in May 2023. This was the kind of environment that was exposed to on my interview. And I knew what was the culture that the LTEC faculty had, the University of Hawai'i. And I knew what to expect when I go there and how to fit in. So this is how I want to start my talk with. So I'm really, really proud to be a part of the LTEC family, Ohana. And yeah, so everybody is talking about design thinking. So here I have another model. This is because I'm showing this because it's what I teach my students. So last semester and this semester, I'm teaching my students to design and develop instruction. So the subject matter could be anything. That could be their educational background or their work experience. But all of them will go through the stages of an instructional design model and they'll be designing instruction. So although I use the Dick and Carey ID model is simpler to talk about. So that's why I have it here. So first, we have to teach our students to do a learner analysis. So we have to understand for whom we are designing instruction. And the same instruction will not work for all learners. It has to be designed according to our learners. So first important step is to conduct an in-depth needs analysis of our learners. So that's what I've been teaching them. And after that, they design and develop instruction and implement it and evaluate it for its effectiveness. So for today, I'm going to talk about my most recent project that is in a place called Lion Arboretum, which is a botanical garden, a beautiful botanical garden in Mānoa. And it has thousands of plant varieties and each has its own medicinal uses, cultural connections, religious uses, and so many different kinds of biological characteristics. And the problem that we found out when we went and talked to the education manager was there were so many visitors who could not walk, and most of them were school students who are on wheelchairs, and there are also adults who were visiting the arboretum to see the plants, but they cannot actually walk through the arboretum, which is on the side of a hill. So the terrain is very rough, so they can't climb up and down the rough terrain. And the education manager wanted us to create an interactive learning module, which will give the same experience of walking through the arboretum, learning about the plants, but staying in one place. So that is what we found the need was. So once we done with the needs analysis, that is the empathy part. So we are putting ourselves in the shoes of the learners. So how can we make the learning as interactive as possible so that the learner gets the experience of actually walking through the arboretum? And we frame this as a service learning project. What is service learning? It is where learners learn something about their subject matter, but they create something or make something which can be used in the real world by real people, and it is actually solving a problem for them. So this is total community engagement, where students are doing a service for the community of Hawaii, where students are coming, but they're not able to walk through the arboretum. So that is the need. And yeah, there's a little bit more about service learning. And I took my students to the Arboretum. We went 2-3 times and we clicked 360-degree photos because we were going to create a virtual tour. So these virtual tours are created using a tool called H5P or HTML5. And this tool can be embedded in something called the Pressbooks. So Pressbooks is available for free, I think. And the University of Hawaii has a big account of Pressbooks, which students and faculty are used to can use. And we are putting these H5P based activities into the Pressbooks. So H5P activities can be virtual tours where we will be embedding the 360-degree photos. And when students click on the photo, they'll be able to turn the photo in 360-degree mode as though they're standing in the center and looking around themselves. And the 360 photo will have hotspots, and the hotspots will be connected to a video or an image or text which talks about the particular plant, the fruits, the leaves, the medicinal value, the religious connections, the cultural connection to Hawaii. All those things will be there. So learners will be learning about the plant, and not only for learning, H5P activities can also be used to assess. So we can create multiple choice, drag and drop exercises, fill in the blanks, and tiny quizzes. And learners can use those quizzes or activities to test themselves, whether they understood what they were learning in the virtual tour. So for reaching our learners who cannot walk through the arboretum, we created these creating these virtual tours and these H5P based activities. And this Pressbook is going to be an open educational resource. I think you must be familiar with this. So we are providing these resources for anybody who has a link, and they can go play with the H5P activities, assess themselves, learn about the plants in the arboretum, and improve their biology knowledge. That's what I would say. And this will be available for anybody. And since it is an open educational resource, others can use this to revise, remix, and then they can make their own educational material. So this will be available for free online. So we are solving a problem in the community where people cannot walk through the arboretum. As a service learning project, my students will be creating the learning activities for those learners, the youngers and adults who cannot walk through the arboretum. So we are solving a problem in the local community of Hawaii. So that is how I'll frame my work. Yeah, thank you very much. We have Chih-Pu. Chih-Pu. Next will be Chih-Pu.
Okay, great. Thanks so much. And it's really fascinating that my colleagues work. I want to first thank IAFOR for accommodating me to present online with this human-centered accommodation. And in the following several minutes, I'm going to talk about human-centered approaches to emerging learning technologies. And first, I'm going to cover why we're going to design, or it's necessary to design human-centered, using human-centered approaches to design emerging learning technologies. In a Hawaiian place of learning, there are a lot of rich knowledge, or the knowledge system that is featuring distinct local characteristics and attributes in the Hawaiian place of learning. As Dr. Menchaca mentioned, Hawaii is the most distant location in the world. So imagine those Hawaiian people's ancestors when they first traveled to Hawaii. There are a lot of unique technology or selling knowledge being leveraged to use to travel to Hawaii. And this unique knowledge are ingrained in local students' way of thinking. So we are trying to designing a culturally responsive pedagogical approach to address students' needs so students can respond to the emerging learning technologies that we design using human-centered approach. And this approach can not only be used in Hawaiian place of learning, but also have implication for educators or practitioners in Asia and the Pacific region. And hopefully using these approaches, we can create engaging and personally meaningful learning experiences for our learners. And we're using systematic approach as previous my colleagues has introduced with a people-first mindset. First, we can approach it through design thinking. We're also having a design thinking graduate level course. In that course, we spend a lot of time asking students to address or empathize with the human needs and what are the target audience needs, what are their local problems you are trying to address by using an empathy-driven perspective to address the problems that they're trying to solve. And human-centered AI can find commonality with design thinking. Human-centered AI emphasizes human in a loop when designing AI technologies. So AI technologies or the algorithm or the emerging learning technology using AI should center on humans' needs, and humans should be in control in the AI technologies that we are designing so it can be relevant to our learners or the users. And here I'm introducing two projects in my previous publication. I advocated for educational practitioners and researchers to design learning experience with localized AI technologies. In other words, we don't use the AI technologies that is created by the large technology company that is not responsive to our students' needs or to our students' resources and the way they think. So we're going to localize the large language model, for example, or the generative AI technologies to be responsive to our local context. So the first project is called Mentor. It's a cross-departmental collaboration initiative between LTEC department and CS department at Mānoa. It's aiming at to create or design AI-powered virtual agents to facilitate learning for undergraduate students in CS. So it is also driven by the human needs. So instructors and teaching assistants, they constantly experience that students are not really well prepared to engage in thinking about why and how their code can affect a larger picture of their system or computer system. They focus a lot on the syntax and the coding techniques. So through Code Mentor, students are being coached or mentored to think more in the bigger picture about coding practices so that they can be well prepared for their future career. Another project is an active virtual environment for teaching with Evelyn. Evelyn is the AI-powered virtual agent name, and these AI-powered virtual agents were designed to react to math and science pre-service teachers. So pre-service teachers are learning in this emerging learning technology environment and interact with those AI-powered virtual agent, Evelyn. And a recent publication also used human-centered AI perspective to address how pre-service teachers value and leverage their agency in interacting with these AI-powered virtual agents so they can be more responsive to pre-service teachers' way of thinking and to prepare them for their pedagogical challenges. And regarding the question, how do we design these AI technologies that can be responsive to our local students' needs? We can leverage large language models or the generative AI technologies and train the language model with local training data sets and integrate it with the purposeful the trained large language model, and through cloud computing services, they can interact locally with the student through their user interface or computer interface. So human-centered AI approaches take into account the quality and experience of the users and incorporating their value and agency. So through understanding their value and their agency, we can design more responsible and responsive technology to address our students' learning needs. And coupled with that is place-based learning. Place-based learning has long been associated with science education. There are a lot of research being conducted in science education using place-based learning approaches, and it has associated with the sense of place, and it has been advocated to engage active learning strategies for learners so they can use their agency to understand and interpret the world and interact with the learning experience they are experiencing. So finally, I just want to sum up with the human-centered approach is considering people first and creating personally meaningful learning experience in AI technologies. It can be used to address learning in a Hawaiian place of learning and also in Asia and the Pacific. And the purpose is to enrich learning for the people and for all students to be successful. And I really like this illustration. Imagine the future of learning. It's located in a unique place that is localized, and students are all engaged in personalized learning with AI technologies, and there's no limitation on their creativity, imagination, and their learning experiences are enriched. With that, I think we're happy to take any questions. I think we're good on time.
Yes.
Hi.
Here, good.
I haven't personally, but my colleague Grace Lynn, that she and I did that together. She actually developed and delivered a design thinking course in our program. And so she was working with those techniques with her students. So I was not a part of that class, but she was. So yes and no, I think is the answer to your question. Yeah. So that was from our department, Learning Design and Technology. But one of the things about our department is that our students can, because instructional design is our theoretical basis and instructional design is content agnostic, the students can really come from any place and do things in any content area of their choice. They're just applying either design thinking or instructional design principles. So it came from our department, but the students bring their own interests and backgrounds.
Spencer?
I'm quite impressed, but also envious that you have a small department and everybody in the department uses design thinking. My question, though, is as an R1 university and a flagship, how have you been able to migrate this or have impact on the many other departments that are at the university, which are much more discipline-centric? I come from the STEM fields on that. And if not, and how might you do this? This is a really wonderful model.
Can I take that one or start? So I would say we haven't, although we would love to. And we've gotten a lot of positive feedback from other departments that they're interested. But as a single department, we really don't have a whole lot of influence over other departments. I would say for me personally, and my colleagues can talk about their own experience, Grace Lynn and I did quite a few workshops through our unit that's called the Center for Teaching Excellence, which is the university-wide professional development. And we got a lot of interest. People really liked the ideas. How much those got implemented, I don't know. So I think it's a good question, but not one that we address directly so much. I think all of us know that there's so much work to be done just within our own departments that we can't solve the problems of our entire universities necessarily.
I would add that one of the nice things about our program, being online and hybrid and having such interdisciplinary students, is I think indirectly the graduates of our program then go out across the islands and work in different sectors, whether it's education or higher education, and have an influence and bring that empathetic design thinking mindset and process and those tools to the table, which I think indirectly feeds back and creates a positive feedback loop, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I would just add on top of that is that, I mean, you can't tell your colleagues what to do. We tried.
If only.
If only. But you can model, and that's what we do in our department. We model not only what we do, but we also collaborate across departments. So we work with special education or teacher education or science education or astronomy or whatever it happens to be. So I think that modeling approach is something that's really important, and then people can see, oh, you do it such and such way. Maybe that's something that we might try. Because even something as simple as having requirements for high quality online learning courses is something that's extremely controversial in an academic setting, right? Like, what are the minimum qualifications and how do you tell people what those are, right? So modeling is one way that you can do that.
Are there any other questions? Wonderings?
These questions focus on the departmental meetings and retreats. I just wondered, you mentioned about the quantity ideas. Yeah, and then can you suggest any techniques that the quality cannot be compromised?
Well, I can tell you what we do, which is when we focus on quantity, we involve the participants in the filtering down and choosing of which of those ideas are most important. So the group decides which ones are of the highest quality, but that in the spirit of creativity and trying to foster creativity, that we strongly feel that the number of ideas is the important piece, because those, it's like an exponential growing, that if you only have 2 ideas, you only have 2 ideas. If you have 200 ideas, you can think more broadly. So I think in answer to your question about the quality, I think it's important to let the group, whoever that may be, decide. And that's part of the design thinking process as well, right? Is for them to really empathize with them and have them be a part of the process of deciding what should be the solution.
And I would add that I think an important part of that filtering process is acknowledging which values do we hold as a group that can be used to facilitate that filtering. So for us, it's really this sense of ohana, human-centric design, thinking about Hawaii and place-based education. Those are some of the values that we can draw on to help us sift and filter and categorize the high-quality ideas, or the ideas that we think would fit best and help us further our goals of embodying those values.
Yeah, and I want to add that it's not a Pollyanna approach. It may sound that way, but it's not. So one of the things that you really have to do is you have to be able to have very difficult, sometimes theoretically different discussions about what it is. We all have assumptions about what we believe is the most important thing. And I think as a group, collaboratively, when you do this process, you understand that, oh, gee, what I thought was the number one most important thing, and maybe as a chair, I have my own bias about what's important, but we have to listen to our colleagues and understand that those, and sometimes we have vehement disagreements about fundamental things, but if we can have those discussions and get to a point where we understand how we can address those, that's what's important. I think Dr. Peter.
Yeah, I was going to add, one of the things that we found through our exercise is that, oftentimes when you have groups, you have people who are more vocal than others. And so one of the things we found as a team that we have to really be cognizant about that. And the way we have structured how we make our decision is that sometimes we just have anonymous voting at the end because we just want to give everyone an equal voice, right? So not just the loudest voice is heard, but everyone's voice is heard in the end.
And I may or may not be one of those pieces.
Oh,
That has, so I can learn.
Any other questions?
I think we have time for one more question.
So, in the spirit of that, cognitive dissonance moments, can you give us some ideas about the experienced long-term thinkers who kind of are in a way, right? So we have to change the culture of their mindset, of their approach to things. How have you dealt with some of those concerns about changing I don't want to say it negatively, the embedded mindsets?
Well, I know one phrase that happens quite a bit in the research practitioner partnership that many of us are involved in the area of computer science education is the phrase of educating up to the decision makers. And so trying to create opportunities to share perspectives that they may not have heard or considered. And so really thinking about creating those opportunities to educate up so that decision makers that may be more entrenched or embedded with a particular point of view at least are exposed to alternative ways of thinking about how we might make a decision or move forward. So educating up, I think, is important.
Yeah, and I think being able to be in a situation where you're uncomfortable in your discussions and being able to share personally that you actually may have been hurt by specific approaches that were taken or being ignored when your opinion was trying to be the opinion that you were trying to get across. If you know anything about instructional design, there's a lot of different approaches to how to do it. Some of them very classic, some of them very contemporary. And people can be very entrenched, just as in polarization of politics, about the position about how to approach problem solving. And so you have to have real discussions about, okay, we can understand that. And you go back to what's best for the group, but not only that, what's best for the department. And sometimes the sharing can be a challenge, but you have to have that space. And I think if there's any takeaway, I think that's the thing that we really try to build in our department, and why we're all here now is that collaboration is important, even if we don't always see eye to eye.
I think also, and Shamila and Chih-Pu can probably speak to this, as well as our most recently hired faculty, we make our expectations of collaboration and what our values are very clear from the get-go. So we use those in our decision-making about who we actually bring in to our group. We use those with our students, and we are careful about things that we choose to do and people that we decide to work with that we think will be able to work well with us. So I think that, I'm looking at Chih-Pu and Shamila, from the very get-go, we made that very clear that while, yes, we value individuals, we also really value the group, and that you need to be able to work within a group and to collaborate with others, that we really do value that. And that if that's not your thing, that's absolutely okay, but that this might not be the place for you, and that we continue to reinforce that.
And if I may add to what Mike was saying, ultimately, right, what we do, what's not only best for the department, but the guidelines always what's best for the students, right? So when we can't agree on that, just a simple example, like if I like to teach on a Monday night and you like to teach on the same night, whatever it is, right? Ultimately, the decision, the criteria we use to make a final decision is what works best for the students, not for you as faculty or for you as a department, right? And that really takes out the whole argument about out of the question here, right? We have to decide what's best for the students here.
Let me add a little thing. So what Dr. Ari said is really, really true, and that's why I added those photos in my first slide to show how the culture was in LTEC, and that was shown to us even during the interview. So it was not like, okay, you come and you give a talk, give your presentations, and you go by. No, and there's a lunch always, and the lunch event itself showed the culture that was there at the department. So the way they interacted with each other and the way they interacted with me, that showed me, okay, and it was not very difficult for me because I'm also sort of like that. So it was not like I have to act like being a friendly person and trying to fit with the culture. It came naturally for me also. I think that worked really well for us.